Welcome to 18th Century Cooking. I'm your host, John Townsend. We have not done shellfish for a long time on the channel. Today we'll be doing a 17th century shrimp recipe from Martha Washington's cookbook. Thanks for joining us today as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century. The book we're using today is Martha Washington's Book of Cookery. This is a cookbook that was handed down to her, a family cookbook from the 17th century. Now, Georgia and Martha Washington lived on the Potomac River, and fishing was one of the big industries all up and down the East Coast. They were catching, regular sea fish, saltwater fish. They were also getting lobsters and shellfish of all kinds. I don't know whether or not they harvested shrimp along the East Coast, whether they had access to shrimp right there at Mount Vernon, but we do know that shrimp was a very common dish for the 17th and 18th century, maybe even one that was fairly inexpensive, at least compared to what we think of as shrimp today. Let me read to you this recipe. It is so simple. To butter shrimps, first take the shrimps after they are boiled and set them on coals till they are very hot. Then melt your butter, beat it very thick, pour it on them when they are served up, and strew on some pepper. Isn't that simple? So let's get started. First step, we need to have boiled shrimp. If yours aren't already boiled, pop them into boiling water, let them boil a few minutes. It doesn't take very long. All we need to do is heat these up in just a little bit of butter. She calls for these to be very hot. If they've just come off the boil for you, then they won't take but a second. If they're already pre-cooked, they're cold, you definitely want to bring them up to hot, but don't let them overcook. Let's get our butter melted. Once our butter's melted, we can take it back up to the table and whisk it up. Pour these into something that's a little easier to whisk. And now it calls for whisking this until it thickens up. This is just such a simple 17th century drawn butter sauce, and it's still common today. In the 18th century, later on, this sauce gets a lot more complicated. I think it's really interesting here that in the 17th century, it's just so simple, and it's kind of harkens, forward to what we would do today. So this has thickened up nicely. It's ready to go on the shrimp. Our shrimp looks great, and it's nicely cooked, very hot. The drawn butter sauce, the pepper, this smells great. These are fantastic. I could eat these all day long. This 17th century shrimp recipe, so good, so simple. Anyone can do this. This is just wonderful. The butter really balances out and brings out the flavor of the shrimp, and the pepper puts it right over the top. So simple, you really must try one like this. And if you're interested in more Martha Washington recipes or recipes that relate to Mount Vernon, see this video.